I have a story I'd like to tell to you. It's a long story, but for you faggots who go too long didn't read, this story is not for you, so fuck off. You see, I'm a simple college student living alone in an apartment. I was very enthusiastic about the release of Heart Gold and Soul Silver on the States. I had purposely locked myself out of all media and the internet aside for school purposes. That means no 4chan, no Bulbapedia, etc. As I was busy with the school year and being a poor fag at the time, I wasn't able to buy Soul Silver on launch date. After my school year ended, I ordered Soul Silver on Amazon. Sorry, I'd rather be a poor fag than a faggy pirate. However, it would take a week for it to arrive. I decided that during that time I would replay my Crystal version on my Game Boy Color. However, I realized how long ago my mum threw it away because I told her that the save went dead, and I was very upset about it then. She also threw away my Silver version, so all I had is my Game Boy Color. As such, I set up the GameStop and bought a used Silver version, as it was the only Pokemon game left that they had for the Game Boy Color. $10, fairly cheap despite it being GameStop. Fucking GameStop! I went home and started it up for a nostalgia trip. However, that's when things started getting bizarre. The Game Freak logo started up as normal, but it just froze there. I just thought that the card was errored or something, so I turned it off and on. The same thing happened. I tried pressing A and start over and over and all the buttons. Eventually, the logo vanished and there was a black screen for about 5 seconds. Suddenly, rather than going to the usual menu screen, I was already in the game, in a previous save file, which is odd as I was expecting all of these cards to have been wiped by the poor battery. Either way, I wasn't complaining as I would have chosen the continue options to see what the previous guy did anyway. First off, I checked his trainer information. His name was just ... He didn't have much originality. I checked his profile and apparently he had put 999 hours put into the game, with all 16 badges, the max amount of Pokédollars, and all 251 Pokemon in the Pokédex. Since he must have Mew and Celebi logged also, I'm guessing he used a Game Shark or was a really hardcore Pokemon player back then. I checked his team to see what badass team he had. To my surprise, I saw 5 unknowns and a 6th Pokemon named Hurry. I'm thinking that this must be some cruel joke by the person who last played this game, but I decided to check the profiles on those Pokemon anyway. As expected, there were different letters on the unknown, all level 5. I was a bit shaky with my unknown alphabet at the time, but I identified the words spelled out to be leave. As with the 6th Pokemon, it turned out to be a Cyndaquil. Mind you, this is before there were individualized Pokemon icons. The Cyndaquil looked normal, but it was only level 5 and only had 1 HP left, with only 2 attacks, Fear and Flash. I don't know why they named him Hurry, but at the time I just disregarded it. The most eerie thing was that, despite my volume being at max, none of the Pokemon he had said their usual cries, just pure silence. Having enough of the team, I closed it. I was parked at what appeared to be in a room inside Bellsprout Tower. However, for some reason there was no NPCs around. Even more eerie was that pillar in the middle didn't move at all, as if it was just leaning on its side. There was no music at all, and there was no exit or ladder, or at least I thought there wasn't. I walked around for a few minutes, but couldn't seem to find a way out. This was certainly not a room I'd seen in Bellsprout Tower before. I tried checking my items for an escape rope, but his bag was completely empty. There wasn't any wild Pokemon either. Finally, I managed to find a ladder which turned out to be behind the pillar. The screen turned black and the music finally started playing. I had a sudden chill as I recognized the melody I heard to be the theme we hear when you listen to the radio at the Alpha Ruins, where the unknowns are at. I immediately realized that this wasn't a loading transition, but rather I was in a dark room and I would need flash. Before I took care of that though, I immediately checked my Pokégear to change the radio to something more pleasant, but it turned out there was no radio card, or even a phone or time card. There was only just a map card in which gold, familiar, I'll just call him gold from now on, was just in the midst of black. I recalled that Cyndaquil had flash, so I turned off the Pokégear and made Cyndaquil use flash. I didn't see any messages saying Hurry had used flash, or anything like that. The room just became lit just like that, and I soon regretted it. The room was a chilling blood red with a near grey path heading south. The ladder I used to go up-down was not there at all. I had no choice but to head south. The screen became darker every 20 steps I made until I finally made it to the end, which appeared to have a sign. I read the sign, which said, "Turn back now." Suddenly, I was asked to answer yes or no. But there was no question asked. I chose yes, as I do not know what it was asking, and the screen went black again, making a ladder climbed sound. The unknown radio music stopped, and a few seconds was replaced with the not as creepy pokey flute radio music. I was in another dark room, but I held my breath and used flash again. Suddenly it said that Harry has fainted. Which is odd since I recall that there was no status conditions like poison on Cynical, and I clearly wasn't in a battle. I checked my Pokemon quickly and suddenly he's no longer in my party. In fact, after a bit of investigating, none of my Pokemon before were there, but instead were all replaced with level 10 unknowns. I did the same thing as before and spelled out the unknowns. My then team of unknowns spelled, "He died." Either way, after that creepy change, the room was lit to reveal myself in a very small room that appeared to be only 4 squares big. The walls in the room were grey bricks, as if I was inside something that was hollowed out. Outside that room appeared to be a bunch of graves similar to the ones in Pokemon Red and Blue's Lavender Town. I walked around in that small room and pressed A, but nothing happened. I already concluded at this point that this was clearly a hack game and some sadistic fuck sold it to GameStop to troll whoever buys it. However, my curiosity kept me going. I checked the trainer profile of ... again, only to find out that the sprite of gold was missing his arms. He also seemed to appear less smug, but rather seems more sad and empty in a way that I do not know how to describe. For some reason, I also now said that he had 24 badges, which is clearly impossible given that there is only 2 regions in the game. After a few minutes of aimlessly wandering, my character suddenly spun and did the escape rope spinning animation. Instead of flying up though, my character spun down, slowly, as if sinking. After that the music stopped. After finally landing, the overall sprite of gold is coloured differently now. Instead of the usual red colours he does, he appeared completely white now, including his skin, as if he came straight from the colourless Game Boy games placed into a coloured background of the Game Boy Color. The only exception to this is that his eyes are red now, which kind of reminded me of Mother 3's Hidden Boss, if you know about it. I checked his profile and now, while now as white as his overworld sprite, he's lost his legs, and he has what appeared to be bloody tears from his eyes. It also said now that he had 32 badges, which now started to disturb me as this change of number seemed to represent something important. I also checked my Pokemon, which this time contained 5 unknowns and a level 100 Celebi without a nickname. The unknowns were this time leveled 15, and spelled out dying. I checked the Celebi's profile. It was a shiny Celebi, except there was only half of the sprite, 1 leg, 1 arm, 1 eye. It only had 1 attack, Perish Song. The area I was in itself was the Sprout Tower with the immobile pillar as before, except everything in the room was completely shaded red now. I walked north for what felt like forever. Eventually, I finally encountered some generic men and women NPCs. They were all lined up to the side, just facing the long slanted pillar in the middle. They were also white, and nothing happened when I tried to speak to them. I kept on going north until eventually the pillar finally appeared chopped off, with a transparent red in the spot. Note that this Pokemon trainer Red, who Ash Ketchum is based off of, for those not familiar with the game. I went up to Red. Without pressing A, I was suddenly engaged and finally in a battle. The music started again, which sounded like the unknown radio music again, but played in reverse. Gold's back sprite matched his front one with the bloody eyes, white skin and lack of arms, while Red's sprite was the same before, in the gold 7 crystal except transparent and colorless. The text simply said, "Wants to battle," as if he has no name. And both of us only had one Pokemon each, which was weird as I swear I had 6 unknowns. My shiny Celebi came out conveniently with a half of a sprite for the back sprite also. The shiny noise and animation was different, and the sound of it made like multiple screech attacks used consecutively. Red sent out a seemingly normal male Pikachu, except he had an extreme level 255 and his sprite seemed sad and has tears in his eyes. Rather than the usual fight, item, Pokemon and run menu, I was only given the option to use the attack. Since Celebi had only one move, Perish Song, I chose it. Naturally, since Pikachu was level 25 and is generically fast, he went first. Pikachu used Curse, lowering his speed and increasing his other stats. I'm not even sure if Pikachu could even learn Curse. Celebi used Perish Song. In 3 turns both Pokemon get KO'd. Like I even had a choice. At this point I didn't even go back to the fight menu as the battle just continued without me. Also note that there was no animations at all for some reason. Pikachu used Flail, which didn't do much damage despite his level on boost and as his health was maxed. Celebi used Perish Song, nothing happened as it was already used. Pikachu used Frustration, which did a shit ton of damage, knocking Celebi down to less than 10 HP. Celebi used Pain Split, which surprised me as Celebi didn't even have that attack in the first place. Now Celebi and Pikachu had about 150 HP. Pikachu used Mean Look. Not like that did anything given I only had one Pokemon, but now I'm certain that Pikachu can't learn that. Celebi used Perish Song. Yet another pointless Perish Song was used. As expected, due to the effects of Perish Song, my Celebi fainted. Except in the text it said, "Celebi has died." And instead of the ordinary drop off the screen animation, the Celebi backsprite just vanished. For some reason the Pikachu was still up even with Perish Song and it didn't count as my loss. Pikachu used one more different attack beyond the 5 attack limit. Pikachu used Destiny Bond. Afterward it said Pikachu has died, with a slow fade out in animation. Apparently I was the winner, as a transparent red sprite showed up saying. At that point I freaked out, as transparent red's head suddenly vanished, leaving nothing but his transparent body. The battle then ended at that point and faded out along with the music. I'm back in the overworld, with another change to Gold sprite. He's now as transparent as Red's overworld sprite. I quickly checked Gold's profile, where this time the only thing remained of him was his head, with a transparent skin. The head was zoomed in a bit, showing a black void in his eyes. It now stated that he now has 40 badges. I then blacked out and checked my Pokemon. They were all level 20 unknowns, which spelled out in red, "No more." I was at what I now know is next to the end. There was apparently no music playing, but for some reason I still felt like something was there that could be heard. I was back in my room in New Barktown. Maybe finally I can play the game properly, but who am I kidding? I know that sadistic fuck must have done something up. I walked around my room to interact with things, as I'm a bit afraid to go down the stairs to see what was waiting down there. Note I said walk, as just like those ghosts we see in Diamond Pearl. Gold was not moving his transparent limbs at all as he walked. Instead, he was just floating around as the background moves with him. As expected, the radio, computer and TV did not work, so I had no choice but to go down the stairs. I ended up in the same lower level of my house. Everything appeared normal, except Mom wasn't home. After failing to interact with anything in this room, I decided to go outside. To my surprise, the door leading outside the south didn't work, and instead, I just walked straight through a void. I continued moving to see what the fuck was going on. My house vanished as I headed south into the void. It was creepy as I entered the void. The outline of Gold's transparent sprite turned white to contrast the pitch black. Eventually, I reached a white area, with Gold's sprite turned back, black and transparent again. I continued south without thinking of stopping at all. After a long trek, I finally encountered something. As it was Gold's regular sprite, I talked to it. He said, "Goodbye forever, ... only with a space in between the forever and ... and vanished. As that happened, it said, ... use nightmare. Which at this point, I would not deny would be impossible to do. Gold did another escape rope animation, spinning slowly downwards like before. I'm now back at the small hollowed out room surrounded by graves earlier, or at least I say I was back there, as there was no sprite anymore. I tried walk around but nothing moved, not even wall bumping noises. I checked my trainer profile, which, with absolutely no Gold sprite left, it said I had 0 badges and all the faces of the Johto gym leaders on the next page of the profiles were replaced with skulls. I checked the Pokemon where all level 25 unknowns. As expected, I spelled it out, a phrase that I dared to read. I'm dead. As soon as I went back to the overworld, the room I supposedly was in then covered with the same blocks as the walls. I then figured out what exactly was the final text which said, "Rest in peace, ... The room was a big grave, surrounded by other graves. Gold had already died. He died presumably a few years after he defeated Red. He was a young trainer who, despite his effort of collecting so many badges in an attempt at becoming a Pokemon Master, he was still unable to avoid the inevitable fate of death. And his efforts was eventually forgotten by the next generation. His beloved Pokemon he had worked so hard to raise had perished with him without a trace. The fate happened to his predecessor Red, and Gold has joined him. I was unable to escape from that text no matter what I pressed. I tried resetting the game and the same thing happened, as which I then finally decided to give up on that horrible game. After that experience, I would never look at that gimmick Pokemon unknown the same way again. They say that only the first generation had folk tales and legends, but the second generation has showed me how unpleasant the truth can be. I eventually enjoyed Soul Silver immediately, but I still cannot unthink the rigged game had told me. I even made me choose Totodile just so I cannot possibly encounter Cynical in that game. For now, I don't know what I was thinking, but I still kept the cartridge, which is locked away in my apartment. I probably should rethink what to do with it.